Hi, and welcome to episode 112 of the Carrier's Edge podcast. I am Jane Jezraoui. I'm the co-founder of Carrier's Edge, and with me as always,
Mark Morrell, other co-founder of Carrier's Edge.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, Jane.
What are we going to talk about today? In the world of trucking and
technology and training and other T-based words, we are going to talk about none of those.
We're going to talk about best fleets to drive for.
Well, we will talk about, I guess, trucking and training and technology. But yes, we have to start off by talking about the best fleets to drive for announcement, which came out last week. We announced this year's top 20 Hall of Fame and fleets to watch. So when last we met on this podcast, we had just wrapped up scoring and had some notes and some things that were interesting, but we couldn't say that much about specifics. Now the top 20 is out and we can talk a little bit more about it.
Well, now I've just basically been doling out logos. So yes. I don't remember anything that was actually in the in the scoring.
Well, we can talk about the fact that we have some new names.
We do. We have two new names,
which is always exciting, and we have fleets to watch, which are also very exciting. So I think the both of the names have been involved. The two new names have been involved before.
Yes.
So they're not like completely new to the program, but realistically, nobody comes into this program and hits the top 20 in their first year. That's almost unheard of.
Well, I don't want to say unheard of because people take that to mean it's unheard of. It's not unheard of.
It's rarely heard.
It doesn't happen that much.
Yes.
And it is happening less and less as the years go by because in the beginning, I think it was, I don't think, I know, because it was new and HR practices were kind of not, they weren't happening a lot in trucking. You had that recruiting model where you just kind of kept the seats full. You didn't really have HR for drivers. You didn't have driver services then. That was a newer concept that came up.
Correct.
I don't know, maybe 2012 or so. But when we first started back in 2008, no one really knew what it was going to be and how you could be good at HR and how could you have an excellent HR program. And even now, you look at the other programs that are out there, they're not really telling you who's the best. They're telling you that you've hit, you've
hit a basic threshold.
Yeah, you're not terrible. So these are people who actually these are companies who have HR programs. They're not the best, but they're adequate. They're adequate enough that you can get onto a list. We look at the best. We want people who are going to beat other companies into submission. And so now it's much harder to get on the top 20 because people are fighting for it and they know people now have a measurement scale that they pay attention to. And the ones who pay attention to how they're measured are actually the ones who do better.
Yeah. And the ones who pay attention to how they describe what they're doing. That's always the gap. When people come in for the first time, you see the same things over and over again where they don't really describe what they're doing. They don't have a lot of specifics. They end up falling back on sort of vague cliches and generalities and
Safety's first, open door policy. And
the answer to every question is we treat drivers well and we're a family here and it's an open door policy. Well, it tells us nothing. So you have to figure out what that actually looks like and what the specifics are. And they have to go through a year or two of that cycle to really figure out what it is that they're doing that's distinct. They have to figure out their story.
I think paying attention is really the biggest hint or help or advice that I could give to someone who wants to put forward their fleet is that if you are not paying attention to how people talk about your company, how you talk about your company, how you approach problems, how you are involving drivers, then you're not going to make the top 20.
Yeah. And so the two new names that we have on the list this year, America's Service Line and Ippolito, are both companies that were involved before. America's Service Line was a top 20 in 2020. So they've been in the program several years, took a break, and they're back and did very well. Ippolito has been in the program for a few years, was a fleet to watch last year, and I thought they were on their way because they had a lot of good things that they were doing, and they put all the pieces together this year and made it into the top 20.
Yep.
Which is always very cool to see. And I think if we look at the things that they're doing now and see the progression of what they said a couple of years ago versus last year versus this year, you can see why they made the top 20.
Yes.
So good effort on programs. Definitely a group of satisfied drivers, and their safety and retention scores reflect that as well.
And I think that the safety and retention, I think a lot of people look at best fleets and really only focus on one component of it. Mm-hmm. And there's 4. There's the questionnaire and the scoring from the programs. There's the driver survey. There's your safety and retention scores as well. There's those 4 components. One of those components, if you are not, or if you're lacking in one of those components, it can break you. Mm-hmm. Your programs may be amazing, right, and your driver satisfaction may be kind of mm-hmm. Like your driver satisfaction may be on the low side, or your retention numbers are terrible, or your safety numbers are terrible. And any one of those can really knock you off the top 20. And it's funny how safety and retention has knocked people off.
Yeah.
Or prevented them from getting onto it. So fleets that want to be in the top 20, you don't have to have a great DOT number, but you can't have a terrible one.
Yeah.
So if you're over 1, you're probably not going to get into the top 20. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't go through the process, because we believe that improving all of the processes that we talk about in the questionnaire will lead to better safety. A good culture is going to help you be more safe.
Absolutely.
And prevent some of those collisions that are in your DOT numbers.
And we also are fully aware that sometimes those safety numbers are just a bad year.
Yes.
It's a bad luck. If you're running certain areas where you're more likely to get hit, then you could have issues. And unfortunately, we have to count that, because that's the experience for the driver.
Yeah.
It may not be a failing of your safety program, which is where the safety people gripe to me about why are the non-preventable things included. And my answer is always the same, because that's the experience for the driver. Even if the driver didn't do anything wrong, if they're stuck at the side of the road because somebody hit them, it sucks. And whatever you're doing as a company to mitigate that, to make adjustments and remove that problem for drivers, then that helps. All of the things will make it better.
Yeah, nobody enjoys being hit.
Yeah, it's disruptive, and basically they ruin their week.
Yep. And then you're basically, all your schedule is off. You are going to a hotel. Everybody has hotels now,
yeah,
which was not the case before, but everybody, sends their drivers to a hotel, which is also probably not, it's okay, but it depends on the hotel. But your whole routine is thrown off.
Yeah.
And so, that's why we ask about it. Anything that affects a driver is fair game for best fleets.
Yeah. And so we saw some really good stuff this year. Lots of interesting things coming up that we talked about a little bit in the last episode, and we'll for sure be talking about over the next little while as we prep our content for the conference that's coming up in a month. But I want to highlight a couple of the fleets to watch, which I thought were very interesting. And it's funny, we end up talking about the fleets to watch more than people probably think we would or should, because the fleets that hit the top 20 earn their way in there every time, and the numbers are the numbers, and they make it onto the list because of their performance in all of the different categories. And for us, we get to know them because some of them come back year after year. Some of them have been there for 5 years, 6 years or more. So it's in some ways, it's like, it's not that exciting for us. But when there's somebody new who comes in, there's a new participant in the program or from a new sector or something different there, that's where it gets kind of exciting for us. So we can see that somebody's got the building blocks. And this year's fleets to watch definitely are in that situation where they really have the building blocks. And we think there's some very good stuff kind of happening there. So The one that stuck out for me, I might have referenced this last time when we were talking about some of the different sectors that are in the program this year, but Quality Carriers I thought was quite interesting that came in. First-time participant made a fleet to watch, which is quite an accomplishment on its own. But we don't have that many tanker carriers in there, or we haven't for a few years. It's been quite a while since we had any number of tanker carriers in there. So it's really nice to see that sector getting involved and to see the performance, see them doing well in there. That one really stuck out for me.
The other one that sticks out, well, for me, but I think for you as well, is Steve's Livestock.
Absolutely.
They are so close.
Yeah.
They're so close. And I think if they, there's such a tiny bit would have gotten them into the top 20.
Yeah, they've got a lot of the right things in place. And that's a tough job. And people think that...
this is agriculture.
Hauling livestock is not an easy job. And it's not for everybody. So the fact that they did that well really is saying something for them.
Yeah. And Williams Dedicated, I think we should have a special shout out because... there is a gentleman from Williams Dedicated who is always the first one to register for the conference, which is not why they're a fleet to watch.
No. But they've been in it for a couple of years, and we see them improving every year. We see them adding more stuff, made a fleet to watch. And it's always great to see first registration for the conference every year. Yeah. Which is a lovely pivot into 1 month to the conference.
That's right.
And
1 month to the conference.
As we're recording this, it is a month today. Oh my God, I'm going to die before then. But we are getting ready. We are now that the announcement is done, we've pivoted to focusing on the content and drilling into all the things we're going to say. And there's a lot to talk about. Big surprise. There's a lot to cover there. So the conference is shaping up to be really good. We've got a couple of excellent guest speakers coming in. An insurance company, Sentry Insurance, coming to talk about how workplace culture affects insurance premiums and loss rates and things like that. So I think that's going to be really interesting. We've got our lawyer who's going to come in and talk about litigation and why being a good workplace actually helps in court. And so that kind of is like the business case for why people should be paying attention to these things. But we've got some great sessions of our own that are starting to come together as well. And so I know you're working on one that last year I sort of referred to it as the categories deep dive, where we go into all the things that have changed in the different categories. And I don't think we have time to get into all of them this year, but you're going to pick some high points. Yeah. And so you've also got a couple of guest speakers that you're going to have.
I have Debbie Landry from Halver Lines and Laura Gates from Transland will be my panel for the discussion. And we'll be talking about different highlights of, what they're doing. So Halver Lines is a fleet, Hall of Fame best fleet. I nearly called them Hall of Fame fleet to watch, but that's not Hall of Fame best fleet. And Transland, I think, is on their fourth consecutive year.
We should know this. It might even be a 5-year.
No, there's only one 5-year and a 10-year. So Prime was the 10-year and
Chief is 5 years.
Chief Carriers was the 5-year.
Transland may be 4 years, but they've been in the program for a while, and they are always very interesting with the things that they're doing.
Yes. So Laura Gates is the president of Transland. I was thinking, what about Ken? And Ken is not the president anymore.
Ken is also a different company.
Oh my God. I am so sorry.
This is how things go a month before the conference. Yeah. You there.
Yeah. Hey, you're going to be on my panel. I don't remember your name or what you do, but you're on my panel.
What I think is interesting about that panel and why I think it's going to be really useful for people is you've got two people. They've got very different experiences. They have different roles. So Laura's the president of Transland. Debbie is head of driver services.
She's the chief happiness officer, which is her nickname. But chief happiness officer is...
so different job titles. Transland is like around 100 or sort of in the lower hundreds in terms of number of trucks. Halver is like 600 or 800 now, so they're going to be a fairly good size. So different size companies. One's in Wisconsin, right on the border of Minnesota, and the other one's in Missouri, so different regions as well. So you get a lot of diversity there in the type of work that they're doing. But what we'll see, teaser/spoiler, is that there's a lot of commonality. You can be very different companies and have a lot of commonality in the kind of things that you're doing. And I positioned this when I contacted both of them about being part of it. I positioned it kind of like what ATRI does for their big reveal every year, where they have like their top 10 issues. And as they go through them, the ATRI side of it is that they sort of give the facts. Mm-hmm. You know, here's the stats, here's the facts, the detail. And then the fleets that are part of the panel give the color commentary. So what they're seeing, how they do things, and what it means for them. And I think the same thing will happen here, where you'll sort of be the commentator with the details and specifics of stats and things like that, and they will provide color on what they're doing around that and how they're solving some of those issues.
That is absolutely correct, sir. You have summed it up perfectly.
Yeah, and allow us to get into a much nicer discussion about how to take these challenges and sort of the trends that are happening in the industry and personalize it for specific fleets and have success with it.
Absolutely.
I think that's going to be an excellent session. I had a prep session last week for a meeting to prepare the content for my final session of the event, which is kind of like a getting started with workplace culture. Mm-hmm. It's how to take all of this information and do something meaningful with it. You come to this conference, you get pages and pages of information. What do you do with it when you go back to the office? Where do you start? So last year I did a session that was essentially how to read your report, what to pay attention to, what to ignore, and how to read driver surveys effectively and what to look for there. And I'm going to do some of that again this year and kind of repeat some of the high points just as a reminder. But then I'm supplementing it with a guest speaker, which is going to be Tim Krolsky from Garner Trucking. Garner is a Hall of Fame fleet. They were the winner of the Stratosphere Award last year. And I asked them to do it primarily because of one picture I saw on social media last spring. And it was a picture of them. They did a social media post, and it was captioned something like, time to start reviewing the results. And it was like 6 of them around a table in a conference room with printed out copies of their final results, their fleet report, and the results book that we had. And they're going through it as a group, identifying where they did well, where they've got opportunities, what the driver survey feedback was. And I thought, oh, that is excellent. So Tim is going to talk about their process, what they do after they get the results, and not just that, but what they do throughout the year, building on that, and how they decide what projects they're going to tackle, who they get involved, basically give people a playbook for how to take some ideas and turn them into successful programs. Yeah,
I think they really do it well, where they review it pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So they do it, when was it, like April or May or something?
Yeah,
it wasn't very long after the announcement.
After they got the report.
So they win the award, and then they sit down and have a meeting and say, okay, why did we win this award? And how can we do better? Mm-hmm. And that is exactly the right conversation to have with your team if you want to win the award. You know, people are asking us now, you know, we need to know where we went wrong or what we could do to improve. And what our answer is, well, one, get a report and see what your driver said and see what your scores are. And 2, come to the conference and see what other people say. And the key is involve your team, do it as a group. Groupthink is going to help you more than just you by yourself going through a report. And don't be afraid to talk openly about what is going on, about what needs to happen. So I think that will be a really good, and marking it up. I think that marking it up is, did you mention that they mark it up, that book?
No, but I asked him to send pictures of it because I've seen that he showed me, he pulled it up and they have printed out and they've taken notes on it and they've marked up the whole thing. So I think that's great. I like to see people just getting into that book and dissecting it and circling things and highlighting things. It's fantastic. So that's going to be a good session. And part of why I do that session as the final thing, well, there's two reasons. One is that it's the last thing. So we've spent a day at that point. We've got 4 or 5 sessions that we've gone through, just filling people's head with all kinds of ideas and kind of action plans and things like that. And I know that you're heading back and you've got your head swimming with ideas. What do you do? So I want to give people a plan as they leave. Here's what to do. On the flight home, here's how to start planning this. Or as you're heading back to the office, here's what to start doing. The second thing is that I know, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, not everybody sticks around for the final session. We've talked about this before, that in trucking, it doesn't matter when you end your event, people will not stick around. You will have attrition throughout. You could end it at 1 p.m., you could end it at 5 p.m., you're still going to have people that miss it.
And it doesn't matter what you put at the end.
No, it doesn't matter what you put.
People will not, you could have a personal
keynote speaker.
Yeah, or like a personal autograph signing by the biggest name, and it could be Beyonce. Well, maybe people would stick around for Beyonce, but
no, they wouldn't. Not in trucking.
No. Well,
I don't know. Garth Brooks.
I don't know. She had a country album. She got a
Grammy for a country album.
I was like in my head. I was like, no, it's not an Emmy.
No,
and it's not an Oscar. What is it? I'm losing my words. But it doesn't matter. So this is what we're doing at last because we think it's a valuable thing and we want you to stick around.
Well, but also I'm thinking, okay, if people aren't going to stick around, how can I reward the people who do?
Yes.
How can I give some extra benefit to the people who do? And I said that right at the beginning of the session last year, and I'll say it this year. This is a bonus for those of you who are sticking around. You're going to have a leg up. You're going to be in a better place in terms of building your workplace culture than those people who left early.
Do you remember anybody who was there who did better?
That's a good question. Well, Quality Carriers came to the event and stayed for the duration, and were taking notes the whole time. And they participated for the first time. And as we were just talking about, they did pretty well.
Yeah. So getting the information about, the answers to the questions, what questions we ask. We do change the questions all the time, but it's always in a similar vein. What are you doing for your drivers in this particular thing? And is it benefiting?
Yeah.
Is it working? And I think that if you I really would encourage people to do it as a group.
Yeah.
There's nothing like group discussions when you're problem solving.
Yeah. So that is starting to take shape. Now we've got to spend the next few weeks getting that content finalized. And of course, all of the million little bits of things that need to be done, we have to get those done and printed and prepped and planned, and all of those odds and ends all the way down to what snacks are going to be available at what breaks and all of those things that turn your brain to mush. And this year, I'm also saying it publicly and committing to it. I'm going to get a haircut and get a new suit before the event.
Okay.
Last year I ran out of time, but damn it, I'm doing it this time.
Well, schedule it.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
It's sort of in my head. These are the things that we have to do over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we do.
That is the Best Fleets Conference and the Best Fleets announcement and all of the fun things coming out of that.
And congratulations to the top 20 in the Hall of Fame who are returning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's, we kind of, I don't know, it's not that we downplay it, but we kind of forget to make a big deal about it. But it is a big deal to make the list. Anybody who has, experienced not making the list knows that it's a good thing to come back.
Yes.
So we have, so American Service Line, Ippolito are new. But we have a lot of returning fleets, and they've been doing good things, and they do a lot of new things as well. So when you're on the top 20, you don't just get back onto the top 20 by sitting still. You actually have to move forward and start thinking of new things. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to pivot into a bit of a different topic that is something that we noticed this year and relates to an interview I did for a Transport Topic story. And it's the subject of short haul routes. And we asked for the first year that we were asking exactly how much of your business is local versus regional versus OTR. And more was short haul than we expected. And I think we talked about that in an earlier episode, that we were finding more of that one than we were expecting to see. And there's a significant chunk of it happening.
I don't know if it was more than we expected to see.
Fleets that we have traditionally thought of as over the road were doing like half regional and local work, which I was surprised by.
I am not super surprised by that because, and this kind of relates to the story that you participated in, but it's been kind of common.
Yes.
It's
100%.
It started that whole, we're going to kind of change our routing and put a terminal here and do this here and rejig this here, has been going on for
10 years.
10 years, yeah.
So that is exactly the point of what I was getting to. I did a story because the reporter was looking at a story about whether more shorter haul or more local runs will make it easier for recruiting, and whether fleets are recruiting more as a result of that. And whether that's an issue, whether that's going to be something that helps with recruiting, helps with retention, and whatever, this new trend to doing this was the initial premise of the story. And so I said exactly what you just said, that, well, it's actually been going on for quite a while. It's been building for quite a while. And we're sort of watching it, but I also don't know if it is going to help recruiting that much. In some ways, it may actually make it worse.
Why?
Well, because what I've seen, and I certainly want to get your opinion on what you've seen, but what I've seen is that those local shorter haul routes are generally given to the drivers with seniority. The
True.
drivers that are the more developed, more the ones that have got better performance in the company. Those are seen as perks. Yeah,
because they're rewards. Yeah,
they're rewards. So if the company is saying, "Hey, come and work here. We've got local routes," but every new hire is getting put on the longer routes, you got to earn your way into the local. It kind of is a bit of a mixed message. It can actually hurt, I think.
Possibly, but I think more fleets are hiring for specific things. So they're saying,
yes,
we've got a New York run, or we've got a Texas run, or we've got this, or we got that. And so people are coming into a job that is already specified. It's not an OTR job. It's not, it's a specific route. Mm. So I think as people are moving into, when they're not just sort of saying, okay, here's a general driver job, I need a driver. That's not good. That's going to be what you're saying, is that it's going to be kind of a, I wanted this short route, but I got this over the road route and I don't want this anymore. Mm. But when you specify exactly what route you're hiring for and you give people what they expect, then you're probably going to have a lot more success. Right.
Yeah, potentially. But I think they're not going to be hiring very many outsiders for those premium routes, because they're going to give it to their internal people first.
That is something that I think would be a good question to discuss later, or even discuss when we're at BIFCon. Just ask people, what their experience is. Because I know Bison, who's in the Hall of Fame, have been doing hiring for specific routes and hiring different kinds of, in different ways for a really long time. Mm. And so they have, basically, you want to work 1 day or 30 days, and I'm kind of quoting, we have a job for you. And so they've been doing that the whole time. Other fleets are kind of developing that, but Bison already had that structure.
Right.
So I don't know. I think we should ask more about it. We should probe more about it into it next year. I think it's all about meeting people's expectations. And I think trucking as an industry is only kind of so-so in meeting driver expectations. And mm-hmm. one of the purposes of Best Fleets is to try and help companies meet driver expectations so that the driver is happier, the carrier is happier with the quality of the driver that they get. And then, the whole thing just becomes more positive. But if you, so like I said, if you are advertising in sort of a general way, but kind of tell people that these routes are available, then you're going to get a bunch of people who want something that they may not be able to get. It's the same thing as, you can get 50,000 miles in a month here, and then you get 20,000. I have like numbers going off the yin yang here. But, you know, you're not getting what's advertised. You're not meeting expectations. And meeting expectations is one of the number one things that you do in recruiting. So I think that's really important that be part of it. That's how you become a best fleet, is by
managing expectations effectively. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I know.
I think that's
mean,
right.
like you basically summed it up in 4 words. So
no, but you make the point very well. I'm going to be curious to see when this article comes out what the other opinions are, because I was just talking to the writer today who had a follow-up for clarification, and she said that the responses are kind of all over the place. So there's some people that say, yes, it is something where they give the senior drivers those kind of routes, the local stuff, and keep them home more. And then there's other people that say, no, they think that senior drivers want to stick with what they're used to, and they don't want the local stuff, which I'm kind of suspicious of, because every time we ask fleets, why do drivers leave? The number one answer from every fleet is drivers leave for local jobs. I
think that is all hooey.
Hooey.
It is hooey. When you say, I think that people, you know, when they do these exit interviews and say, you know, why are you leaving? And I think drivers lie. Mm-hmm. I think people are there saying, I want to drive a local, it's a local job, it's a good local job. They're not going to tell, if you're leaving somebody, you don't tell them the truth.
No, you give them a reason that they can't rebut. Exactly.
So, you know, I want to be local. And drivers don't want to, I don't want to say this, I don't want to generalize, but from my experience, drivers don't want to be confrontational necessarily with their fleets.
Right.
They just want to get out.
Yeah.
If they want to leave, they just want to go. So I'm going to tell you whatever. Mm-hmm. And I want a local job is whatever. I've seen a lot of stats, like carriers who really keep good stats, and it's not, they have that, but there's a lot of other reasons that people leave.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a bit of mythology going on around this whole thing about drivers wanting local jobs, because why would drivers want to be drivers? Like, why would they be an OTR driver in the first place? Like, why wouldn't they look for a local job to begin with?
Yeah. Well, sometimes they did look for local jobs and there weren't any, so they went on the road. But yeah, we'll see.
So many people talking about local jobs. Really? I don't think so. I think it's a get out of jail.
Could be. Yeah, could well be.
So, and that's why it's all over the place, because I also think that not all fleets manage expectations very well.
Yeah.
They don't know how to kind of explain to drivers what they can get and what the options are before they're hired. So people, they leave because they don't like what they think they were told. Mm. And what I've seeing in the best fleets is there's a big emphasis, and I think we should, I don't know if we even score this anymore, about that whole communication about the recruiting information that you give to drivers. Like
consistency.
How do you, consistency. And most people have solved that, which is basically most companies have some sort of expectations document that they go over.
Yep.
So they explain it beforehand. They explain it in orientation. They have sometimes there's a document that they sign. It's just basically laid out. And if you do that, then it doesn't really matter. So you want it. It's not local jobs or over the road jobs, because some people want local or not short haul. Some people want short haul. Some people want long haul. It's really matching people.
Yeah, I think so. One of the other things that came up in this discussion is whether the prevalence or the advertising of shorter haul routes will help bring more people into the industry.
Nope.
You don't think so?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Why?
Because I think that a lot of people go into commercial driver training without really knowing what they want. Mm. And I don't think they're thinking about much of anything. I think they're thinking, well, I could always get my license. Let me get my license. So they either know the industry, understand what being a professional driver entails, and go to school, go and do that job, and everybody's happy. But then you have a lot of people who have no idea what the trucking industry is about. Mm. So they come in, they learn how to drive a truck, and they really don't know what they're doing. They really are kind of, some people are second careers, some people are, foreign workers, some people are, it's all over the place. And there's a lot of school, like the carriers who have schools, they have a big part of that, a big part of a successful CDL program is to explain what the life is like.
Yeah. Is
to really give them an indication of when you do this job, it's not 9 to 5. It's not, you're not going home on weekends necessarily. It's like this, and it's lonely, and it's hard on you, and you have to really focus on how you eat and how, making sure you get exercise and all of the stuff that we know is an issue for drivers. So that can help. But I think the short route and the long route is not, I don't think so. I think it's going to make that big a difference. I think people are going to think it makes a difference because, if you can go out for 2 days and then come back, then yeah, that's fine. But I don't think that people who don't have their license now are thinking, I only want to go out 2 days. They don't know. They don't even know.
That's the reason why I thought it might make a difference, because there is a perception outside of the industry that being a truck driver means being gone for days on end or weeks on end. And if word gets out, and if the industry is able to show that no, there's a lot more to it, there are a lot of jobs where you're home every night or home every second night. There's a chance that some people might consider the industry who otherwise wouldn't. People who have looked at it and said, truck driver, I don't want to be gone for weeks on end. And then you say, well, actually, you could be home every night or two. There'd be a few people, there's going to be a small percentage that would say, oh, all right, well, maybe I'll take another look.
Okay, yeah, all right, I see your point. And actually, it's probably good that you talked to them. Was it Transport Topics? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's probably good that you talked to them because
But I also see your point as well, is that you make a really good argument that people are kind of, there's two elements to it. There's people who know the industry. They've got some connection to it through family or friends or whatever. They already know what they're getting into. People who just have no clue and are doing it because it's a job and it's going to be stability or whatever. Neither of those groups is going to be affected by this, for sure. Whether it's long haul or short haul, neither of them is going to be affected by it. But that high school kid, yes, where somebody's coming in and saying you may want to consider this, you may want to consider this as an option, instead of saying, ew, weeks at a time on the road, they might be saying...
that you're spot on. Yes. Okay. I absolutely agree with that if you are going in and trying to educate people about the industry, then providing those options, absolutely. There are people who are going to want to go on the road for a long period of time, but there's absolutely going to be people who only want to go for a couple of days. I think that is, yes. And I think that the idea of having those variable or the flexible options where you can choose what you are doing. Do you want a 4-day week? Do you want a 5-day week? That flexibility is what Gen Z or, younger, younger cohort kind of value. And so providing that flexibility is a really good idea. I think that where I was coming from is the people who don't know why they're even there.
Yeah,
and there's a good number of people who are not super sure why they're doing this.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
And they don't, and it's not going to affect them at all. Which is why I think the outreach that trucking companies do is really valuable and why you get points for it in best fleet scoring, because if you're not, you don't have to have a school and you don't have to have a finishing program. But you should have at least some kind of outreach to say, hey, future possible workers, consider trucking. Schools love it when they have some, the teacher can not teach. They love having people come in and speak. And trucking is something that has historically not been really represented that well. It's starting to, if you listen to Jimmy Mack's education station on Friday mornings on SiriusXM, you can hear a lot about different types of education that's happening in the commercial driver arena. And there's lots of things happening. There are high school programs where you can actually do like what do you call it? It's like a work term. And so you can work for a logistics company. It may not be driving, but you can work in the warehouse. You can sort of learn about the logistics, the whole logistics side of it. You can, so the school programs I think are really good. The vocational type of programs are very good, but there's also Next Gen Trucking, which is, got a lot of resources for new drivers and trying to match, new younger people with the trucking industry. And then, just kind of your regular schools, which take people through, teach you how to drive a truck, teach you how to back a truck. It's not even really driving a truck. It's really all about backing. And I've learned this through listening to a lot of these things. It's really like you really just want to be able to drive the thing backward.
Most of the schooling is just going backwards.
It's just going backwards. And they talk about, but it can't just be about operating the truck. It has to be about
the whole life.
Yeah, because it is a life.
Yeah, interesting. Well.
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to get all that out of me.
No, I don't know where all that came from. That was the energy for the week.
Yeah, I have to go to sleep. I have to have a nap. Yeah. Because it is, what is it now? It's 4:00, which means it's 7:00 Eastern.
Yeah.
Which means it's midnight somewhere. So I'm tired.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of other things to touch on that are coming up, both kind of interesting things. One that I want to touch on because it's coming up next week, and that's our monthly webinar, which is
so exciting.
So exciting, yes. So we've got quite a large number of people that are interested in this one. I'm doing it with enforcement or ex-enforcement people, frontline commercial vehicle solutions, systems, services, frontline
we
CVS.
Just call them, what is it, frontline CVS?
Frontline CVS. And
commercial vehicle systems?
I'm suddenly forgetting what the S is. Apologies,
Sorry,
guys.
frontline. Because we're just calling you frontline and we forget what the rest.
Or frontline CVS, yeah. But it's mostly, well, it seems to be almost exclusively staffed by ex-enforcement people.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so they're now retired enforcement, and they are doing a consulting company which helps fleets that are in trouble, basically rehabilitating fleets that are not in good shape. So I'm doing a webinar with them about what enforcement looks for.
It's Frontline Commercial Vehicle Solutions.
Solutions, okay. That makes sense. So we're going to be talking about the perspective of the enforcement person. What happens when they pull somebody over, what they're looking for, what fleets most commonly do wrong, what drivers most commonly do wrong, what all of those people can be doing to improve the experience. I think it's going to be a fantastic discussion.
Oh, I think it is. I think you're going to get a lot of questions.
Well, see, this is where I'm going to be a bit selfish because it's a little bit like the one we did with a lawyer a year and a half ago where I got a lot of questions of my own. Like, I want to just grill you for the hour. And for these enforcement people, it's kind of the same thing. And I think it's going to be, really a good session. We got a lot of people registered already, way more than what we normally have. Like, I think we have like triple the number of people we had for our session on learning management systems before Christmas.
Well, I always talk about that training isn't sexy, and it kind of...
Yeah.
Learning management systems, the technology that you use to support your training it's not a fun topic. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I constantly say this is not a sexy occupation. It really isn't. And but enforcement to the trucking industry,
to people that are subjected to enforcement,
legal and enforcement is like crack. They can't get enough. You can always get someone to show up.
Yeah.
And it's not just our webinars. It's anywhere. It's like any conference or anything like that. Everybody always wants to go and hear the lawyer and hear enforcement. I know that it's really popular to have actual enforcement people, current enforcement people at Fleet Safety Council and Ontario.
All the safety conferences have those. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a good webinar.
And you don't have to pay. You don't have to, you don't have to fly somewhere. You can just get this webinar and get your questions answered. So make sure you get your questions in early if you come to the webinar.
Yeah, because I'm going to be hogging the time.
Yeah. And it's cool that they're retired, right? So I think that's really cool that you have the opportunity to talk to people who are not kind of bound by whatever they can and cannot do while they're on the job. They can talk a little bit more openly about it.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting is that not just were they doing roadside enforcement, but they also were in charge of training, educating the other enforcement officers. So what was their approach? How do they teach people? What do they try and get across to the officers? And what is their kind of motivation on the things that they're doing? And how did they work with industry to figure out what to prioritize? So
yeah, they do a lot of CVSA. I know does a lot of work with industry.
Mm-hmm. So it's shaping up to be a really good session. So,
excellent.
And I think from there we can wrap it up.
All right, sounds good. There was one more thing.
There was a few product things. We haven't really talked about product much at all, but
no,
we can save that for next one.
Yeah, let's do a product focused chat next time.
All right, we
Sounds
will forget
good.
that. I'm
Yes.
sure. But in theory, we are going to do a product-focused chat at some point.
Okay.
For now, thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.